This is The Bagel Report, a podcast exploring Jewish representation and identity in popular culture, with your hosts Esther Kostanowitz and Erin Ben Moshe, and now a production of J, the Jewish News of Northern California. Hey, Erin.
Hey, Esther.
We've got a lot to talk about, and it's a very futuristic episode today. We're going to get to that in a minute. But I also wanted to say that, just start a little bit differently today, because I just about an hour ago was at a Zoom funeral, which is always sad. It was for a young woman, very young, Orli Chaim Wildman Halpern, who is the daughter of a friend of mine from camp. And Orli had battled cancer for the last 3+ years. She had an incredible life even with all this illness. She identified as a surfer and an actor, and she did a lot of dancing on TikTok, and she did really amazing, amazing things for such a short and illness-beleaguered life. So at the funeral, there were just a couple of things that came up that I thought were just really interesting and actually relevant to the kind of stuff that we talk about here about, popular culture, Jewish life, and all of those things. The first thing that really struck me is that people kept saying that she was kind of living between kid and cancer, that those two things were kind of like very much part of her daily life. And a lot of people who spoke, her parents and a cousin and her aunt, talked about how she had to simultaneously be like a child and an adult, and how that was really hard. But throughout those speeches, they all talked about the pop culture things that she enjoyed. One of the things was that she had a list of things she wanted people to know about her after she died, and including that she was a Swiftie, she loved Taylor Swift, that she loved her dog, that she was a feminist. And then the fourth thing on the list was Lizzo. And they're like, what? That everybody should listen to Lizzo or be inspired by Lizzo? She goes, no, just Lizzo. She was also bold. And then she added that she was also bald. So I think that it's really nice to see her sense of humor and the impact which popular culture had on her in the form of music. And she also used to sit with her aunt and watch rom-coms and Wednesday and Gossip Girl. Her cousin introduced her to Marvel, and that changed both their relationship and her relationship to nerd culture. He was able to arrange for a special screening at her house of Wakanda Forever. And I just thought that was so powerful. He also, the cousin also is a big Star Wars fan. And so he quoted Luke Skywalker and said that no one has ever really gone. And it just struck me how pop culture gives us language when we have no words, and that we can swim in these metaphors of power and powerlessness, responsibility and blame, and all of those things that we might not be organized enough in our brains when we're experiencing deep grief to organize. So there was that. And then there was also the fact that a lot of people talked about Judaism and about God and about, how do you believe in God when something like this is happening to a child? And it's really challenging. But they also all spoke about how you see God not in the afflicting of the disease, but in the care and support of the community and the friends who react to it by showing up and being there. And so I was also struck by how faith can give us a context and a framework to follow when we can't imagine what the next step is. So, one of the things that I didn't really know Orli. I had met her once. I know her mom from camp. I met her dad once. I met her sister once. But I thought, having been at the Zoom funeral, I was really struck by these ideas and how much she lived in her young life. And I think they also had said that most important thing is to tell stories about Orli. And I don't have stories about Orli, but I do have this observation based on other people telling stories about Orli, so that's how somebody continues to live after they're gone. So I just wanted to share that here with you and with our listeners. And if anybody else knew Orli, you can certainly write in and tell me that I got it totally wrong. But I think that, these elements, the idea that pop culture can really be something that we hold on to, just like faith, during times that are very challenging. So
I love that.
Sending out love to the family and to all those who were impacted by Orli's life.
I love that comparison. I think it really just shows that it's the power that art can provide you in a lifetime. Yes, we talk about TV and movies and theater and actual like museums sometimes that will fall into what we talk about, because it really is just like the best form of escapism and also the best way to kind of deal with what you've been dealt. Like over the weekend, we went to go see The Lion King, and it never ceases to amaze me the power that this show has on people, that everyone can walk into this theater and completely just buy in to the fact that these animals are not really animals, or that we've known this story. This is not a new story. We know what happens. And yet every time the same incident happens with Mufasa, there is not a dry eye in the theater. Like, it's just so powerful. The messaging and the songs and the sense of community when you're all sitting together watching the same thing. Like, the same thing when all these people were at the Taylor Swift concert. It's a 3-hour show that she's giving her fans. Like, there's this sense of belonging that you have when you're watching the next episode of Mandalorian and you can go to work and tell your friends about it. Or if you're at that concert or you go to that show. So it's really beautiful that, like, when remembering this girl's life, they weren't just talking about her. They were talking about the things that brought her joy. And I love that pop culture did that for her, especially when she was going through something so difficult and unimaginable.
That's right. And I think also these are touch points for everybody who experienced these pop culture things with her. Now, when they experience pop culture things, they will think about her and they will, think about how she would have reacted, or maybe even hear her voice in their head saying that, that was nothing like Avengers Endgame or whatever the story is, So I think having that is also like a very important anchor for people who are left behind after a loss. So thanks for letting me talk about her. And thank you all, listeners.
Course.
I know that wasn't like the jovial Erin and Esther intro that we generally give you, but I think, it was important for me to share that with Erin and with all of you. So thank you for listening.
And now on to our newie and Jewy for this week. Passover is right around the corner. And this year, we are bringing you yet another Hagimmick. But first, Esther, tell us the origin of the Hagimmick.
Right. So a couple of years ago, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, a show that we love to talk about here and we'll be doing more talking about later, created this Passover Haggadah with Maxwell House, which is known for its very simple, basic Haggadah. And it was pink, it had a brisket recipe in it. It had like these little spots that were supposed to be like from fake wine stains or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of cute, but also I felt that they really missed an opportunity to explore the themes and characters of Maisel with any gravity, or not gravity, but like with any meaning. Like why not use all of that creative material and infuse it into the Haggadah?
Well, because Esther, that would take work.
Right.
And Amazon did not want to do that. They just wanted to give us something around the time we were going to be getting in a season.
I think it was just Maxwell House. I had just I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg on that one. If it was like, Maisel was like, let's do a Haggadah with Maxwell House, or Maxwell House is like, let's sell coffee with Maisel. I don't really know who started it. But so this year, the Hagimmick, which is really the gimmick in every conversation we seem to have these days, is ChatGPT, which for those of you who don't know what ChatGPT is, it is an artificial intelligence program that will generate text based on what you give it as like little food pellets.
And it's not just like, hey, Google, tell me the weather. It's, hey, ChatGPT, write an email in the voice of Arnold Schwarzenegger quoting Star Wars, so you can wish my cousin Leo a happy birthday.
Right.
And then it will. And it's getting so advanced that, it's like amazing, but it's also kind of just like, it's kind of astonishing how accurate a computer can be while also still being incredibly like, there's typos and there's inaccuracies. Like, it's still not perfect, but the fact that it's pretty good And it's a tool that is helping people and, upsetting teachers around the country is pretty amazing.
For sure. I mean, teachers are going to get upset, and I think rightfully so, because, while this can be a help, the question is, will it become a crutch? Has it already become a crutch? Is it replacing human learning and human creativity? There's lots of conversations we could have about that. But since we want to focus on the use of ChatGPT in creating Haggadot and Haggadot supplements, there are at least 3 that I'm aware of, and they came in within a day or 2 of each other into my email. So I want to address them in the order in which I found out about them, and also to talk a little bit about what makes them different and whether I'm okay with it or not okay with it. And Erin, I know you have some comments about them as well.
Yes.
So we'll start with Haggadot.com, which is, obviously I'm a little biased about Haggadot.com. I'm very close friends with the founder, and it has also been a very important resource for millions of people at this point, I think. They often they don't just have Haggadot that are printed and bound and you can get them in a library or a synagogue store or anything like that. They provide supplements so that people can personalize their Seder. So they have a ChatGPT supplement that was created by one of the people who works at Haggadot.com, Marissa Stein. It is created as a supplement, and it's clearly stated where it was generated by AI. And Erin, I know you have it in front of you. Could you give us a read on one of them?
Yes. So it's very clear, she has an introduction. Marissa Stein says, like so many other years, she's been looking for new ways to make a Seder relevant and modern. And so she was like, what better way to do that than with a ChatGPT supplement? And so there's one of my favorites is a poetic introduction. And so it says, prompt, write me a poetic introduction for the Passover Haggadah. And then it gives you this very dramatic. It's gather round, dear ones. It's that time of year when a story of Passover draws near, a tale of triumph, of struggle and pain, of a people's freedom, hard won again and again. It's just really amazing. And I mean, it's stupid and hokey, but okay, a computer did it. That's kind of amazing. And then let's say you want, the first blessing over a cup of wine to be rewritten over in a Shakespearean English translation. So then they give you one, and it's just very clever. And also, while also still maintaining the relevance of what that is. So it's not okay, it's just Wikipedia-ing, what it thinks Kaddish is or Orchatz is. It's no, it knows what it is. It's taking the information from every single database it can find, probably from Haggadot as well, and it's pulling together something in a way that's still accurate. So that to me is crazy.
Crazy, but you think it's also awesome, right?
I'm into it. I'm definitely Ben Moshe Cooper Simtabs. If you're listening, get ready. We're incorporating some of this in our Seder. And I think it's cool because it's commenting on what's happening right now in real life. And I think one of the most important parts of this holiday is grounding it and not making it seem like it was so distant. There are a lot of, a couple of years ago, people were trying to make, the argument of a Black Lives Matter discussion during the Passover Seder because we needed to see the parallels. We needed to talk about who is free in this country. People do modern takes on 10 plagues all the time. And I think it's very cool that someone's taking this technology and trying to incorporate it to grab young minds and include them in a Seder.
Yeah.
Especially since it's the most talked about thing right now.
Yeah.
Every space.
There's no question. I mean, everybody's talking about this and, is it good? Is it bad? In some cases, is it good for the Jews? Is it bad for the Jews? We're going to have that conversation.
Right. And what better way to have that conversation while watching it in action?
Right.
Even the other night I was showing my husband this and he was getting so excited. He's like, wait, we can personalize it. We can make this a Seder that we can build it on our own and update it and all these things that it doesn't take away from Haggadot.com, right? We're still always going to need Haggadot because we still need the creator to create the supplement, but I do think it's like an interesting experiment.
Yeah. I mean, over the decades and, over the centuries, the Haggadah has been a text that is modular and that rabbis and other people in the community add to as circumstances during the year, non-necessarily Jewish lives change. And, that's one of the imperatives that's nested in the idea of Bechol dor vador chayav adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim, and which is that in every generation a person must look at themselves as if they had exited Egypt, if they had been part of the Exodus. So part of seeing yourself in these texts is also, and in that experience of Exodus, of leaving slavery, of leaving Egypt and leaving slavery, part of that is translating, in a way, the Haggadah into your own language and your own experience. Mm-hmm. And I don't just mean Hebrew to English or, Aramaic to English or whatever, but just because putting it in terms and experiences that you can understand better and make comparisons better. So I'm always fine with a Haggadah supplement. I'm always fine with taking a more contemporary lens on the ancient texts, on the rabbinic texts, and creating deeper meaning. Mm-hmm. So I'm always fine with that. And especially because it's stating what the process was in creating it and is positioned as an experiment, I'm okay with it. And also obviously biased because it's Haggadah.com. I will admit that freely. So moving on to the second one. And also I will say, Erin, I'm really excited to hear how it goes over at your Seders. So we'll have to report back after Passover. The second one I saw was also marked as a supplement, and it was called the Passover Seder, but spelled Saider. The AI meaning artificial intelligence. So in case you didn't get it. And that's from the Community Scholar Program, and Ari Katz, who is its founder and director. The text is entirely generated by ChatGPT. The art was generated by DALL-E, I think it's called, an AI program.
It's the AI art program where you type it. It's the similar thing. You type in what you want to see, and then the AI creates the art, which is also unbelievable.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that too. So it says it provides new songs and blessings and new versions of Manish Tana and Dayenu and 10 Plagues, and features fictional discussions between Moses and Aaron. And it also includes the prompts that were used to generate the text. And I think that, again, the honesty of that, providing readers with insight into how these texts came to be, and what kinds of prompts might have been used to generate this text via artificial intelligence, I'm okay with it. I'm all right with it. All of these three came out within a day or two of each other, and each one of them was like, we're the first. So they're like, no, we're the first. We're the first. So these are the first three. I think Haggadah came first, but we'll check out the actual publication dates of these things and see who was first. So moving on to the third one, which is available on Amazon, called Haggadah AI. So like Haggadah, but with an AI on the end instead of AH. And it's by Rabbi, which sounds so awesome when I say it like that, doesn't it? Rabbi, but RABBAI, again, because we're putting the AI in Haggadah.
Right,
we're
instead
putting
of
the
Rabbi
AI in
Google.
Rabbi. Right, exactly. So this is a collection of original commentary, Midrash, and Divrei Torah, all by ChatGPT. The author's note, which is, again, this is a kind of a book description because it's available on Amazon for something like $25. And I think the other two are free, which is also helpful. But, that every year there's a ton of Haggadot that come out. So I guess it had to happen. And so they said that the AI technology was using a vast body of Jewish texts, which allowed it to generate commentary that's both knowledgeable and thought-provoking. Mm-hmm. Their artwork is by Midjourney, which is another one of those AI image generators, and that they're created to complement and enhance the text. And I am all for different interpretations, artistic and textual, of Haggadah and of all of the, not just of the Haggadah, but of all of the things that happen in and surrounding the Haggadah, like all of the tangential stories, all of the, stories from Egypt, or, how the Jews maintain Jewish identity and all of that. And I really am I think I always have been for the use of technology in promoting and expanding that. But for some reason, when it comes to like both the artwork and the text being generated by AI, I'm just like asking, like, Erin, what are we even doing here? Like, what about human insight and creativity? Like every year I go through the Haggadah, the different Haggadah that I have, and I look at the images that artists have generated with their own interpretation of, say, like the four children, right? So that's a very popular space for artistic exploration. And I'm okay with, these the AI generated images being part of that, just not the entirety of it, I think is where I'm landing on this. Like, and in terms of, I want to hear what my friends and teachers have to say. I don't need a computer generated take. And I'm just like feeling like the Grinch who stole the Afikoman. And so I don't know. Am I just like a cantankerous old person who just wants it to be traditional? I feel like I'm open to things that are non-traditional. So help me unpack this, Erin.
What's so funny to me though is that one, I don't think you're being a Grinch. Two, I don't think you're being an old person because you also have created really awesome pop culture Haggadahs in the last few years that I have used with my friends, and they've been very cool and they've been well received. I think you're very good at knowing what's happening in the moment and going, wait, we can use this in the Passover story and we can make it fun and you can find meaning while also like laughing at the Seder table. So like, I think you're all about that. I think what's weird about AI is that it's a computer. It's a computer trying to offer meaning, which is something that like, no matter how hard a computer can try, it will never actually know what it's like to have that connection, to have that meaning, which is something that we were just talking about earlier, that like, humans need connection. It's why they go to the theater. It's why they go out on a bar on St. Patrick's Day and wait in a line. Like people are constantly looking for something to connect with and to. And so the fact that like a computer can generate a beautiful image that we've never seen before, or it can grab all of these, Talmudic references and create a modern take on something, it's confusing because we're like, wait, why, how can it do that? But really what it's doing is it's aggregating. It's a computer. It's generating all of these things and it's letting us, the people at the Seder table, decide what that meaning is. It gives us the text and then we do something with it. Also, it's still controlled by a person. A person is still saying, hey, we all know Shakespeare. Hey, we all know Rocky. Make the four children, all of these people in pop culture. And what do you think they would say? Right? Like it's still using what we have. It's just very strange to me because I think supplements are really important when bringing together people for a Seder because you don't know where their entry point is. That you'd like in the last couple of years, the way I was raised in our Seders, like we've always been doing something different. Like we always had traditional things, but we'd always try and implement a play or like funny little squirting frogs at the table. So that way we can keep everybody engaged and kind of level the playing field. So even if you don't know the whole thing in Hebrew, that's okay. And so especially like in the last couple of years, we've always been trying to find new ways to tell the same story in a way that would like, bring discussion there. Because when else are you going to have these meaningful conversations, if not when you're supposed to be having them, which is at this Seder? And if AI can help us do that, I think that's great. If we only rely on AI to do the work for us, then I don't think it's going to end up as meaningful. And then it'll end up just being like the Maisel Haggadah, right? Where it says, okay, make me a Haggadah. And then it will. But the meaning won't be there because the person behind it, creating it, just wanted a copy, paste.
I think you're right, Erin. And I think, now that you're talking about it, I think that this is the same objection that I have to the Maisel Haggadah, is that like, it just seems like soulless, it's not, it doesn't add to meaning. It doesn't make you laugh. There's no added value. The way I've been thinking about it is that it's like a Festivus airing of grievances. Like, I've got a lot of problems with you people, but people are using it to avoid putting in work or doing things that are thoughtful. And if this is a longstanding problem for me anyway, where people are like, oh, you should just add people via LinkedIn. You don't have to say anything in an opening note. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I say anything in an opening note? Why wouldn't you want to personalize this connection if you're trying to connect with somebody who can help you and who you can help? There should be a personal aspect of that. Fundraising emails that are completely bland and devoid of any human personality, even before you run them through an AI, right? There's a lot of those out there. So if AI can create all of these texts, then why should anyone think critically? Why should they develop an idea of what personal meaning is? Why should they craft any letter that could be a personal connection as opposed to just, soulless communication? And, this also extends into the world of technology, as we see with TV and with movies, is that sometimes when an image is created by a machine, there's this uncanny valley where it looks like real, but it also doesn't look real at the same time. And it's a very unnerving thing to have in a film. And I think that, as we kind of move forward and have all the technology all the time, just because we can do something now doesn't mean we always should. And I think that discernment is not something necessarily that can come from AI. It has to come from humanity and from considering the consequences of our actions. Yeah.
And I think this is a great segue into our next topic, which is also very futuristic for us. I love that we're taking a deep dive into the science tech world.
We've got a theme, baby.
We do, man. Yeah, we do. Okay, so last week we told you about a show that was coming to Apple TV Plus called Extrapolations. And we were like, oh, the trailer seems really Jewish. I wonder how Jewish it is. Guys, hold on to your butts. It's incredibly Jewish. Holy moly. Boy, did we not see this coming at all.
Also, I'm very much in favor of any use of hold on to your butts, which is just such a great line from Jurassic Park, spoken into existence by Samuel L. Jackson as only he could, but doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep saying it.
Because you just said, if we can, should we? And I was thinking Jurassic Park.
That's right.
Anyway, okay, so everything about the first 3 episodes that are all available are great. It's a depressing show. So if you want something happy, this is not for you. However, it is filled with meaning. It is filled with Jewish meaning and nuance. And simultaneously, it's talking about climate change in a really tangible way. Usually when you see climate change or, we have to save the planet, it's very 2012. It's very all these things are just happening all at once. Or it's what's that scary Will Smith movie, I Am Legend? I watched that at the beginning of the pandemic, and what a mistake that was. Everything either feels super, super apocalyptic or super, super well, this isn't going to happen to us. And Extrapolations is not that. Everything that is happening in the show is something that we have already seen or experienced at some capacity within the last few years alone. And so just entering it that way, you're like, oh, okay, so this is the kind of show it is. And one of the things that I think is, okay, I'm also going to make a huge oversimplification here, but my guess is that one of the episodes takes place in a synagogue, kind of talking about Passover, talking about a bat mitzvah. It's super, super, super Jewish. And David Diggs is this awesome rabbi who is literally navigating where he has to be and what community he needs to serve. And seeing that challenge is really great. But I think one of the reasons they decided to have Judaism in this end of the world climate change story is because in Judaism, there's this whole thing about you're talking to God and you're frustrated that you're not getting a response back. And we don't believe in hell. We don't we think about the life now, not the life that's coming. And we think about each other, and we think about 3 answers as a way to solve something. And we really feel like, okay, it's on us. Like, we can't blame God for everything. Like, God, Hashem, will provide. However, like, it is up to us in the now to make this world a good place. And I think all of those themes are explored in one of these episodes. And it's just really interesting to watch it all unfold. I don't want to spoil anything.
I know.
So I'm trying to like broad stroke it.
I know. I mean, I feel like I do like it when Apple TV or anybody like drops 3 episodes, because it gives you an idea of like what the series is that you don't get when you just have 1 episode, and you don't feel obliged to like power, just to snort down however many episodes in order to be able to talk about it. So I really do. I actually am a fan of this. And I think that, the way I just want to set it up a little bit to talk about the world that they're creating, because part of this whole narrative is understanding what world you're living in, right? And it's not futuristic in the fact like that there are no flying cars there's like one helicopter that looks like it's a personal helicopter for somebody who works for a very well-off organization. But in terms of, you see futuristic stories, it's all like Blade Runner outside, and that's not what this is. They talk about 2037, which, as you are aware, is not that long from now. It is far enough to be away, and then close enough to be something that we can visualize. The world is burning, flooding, and the air is unbreathable. But there are some good things that happen in the world, including that we find out in the first episode, Israel and Palestine are living in a peaceful 2-state solution. So that's the good news. Only 15 more years of strife ahead. I really need to know like which, millennials and Gen Z brokered this peace, and let's get them into a think tank immediately until they figure it out. Also, someone has cured cancer. Although we learn in another episode that mosquitoes may be deadly if you're not vaccinated. So, wins and losses all around. So I think that it's interesting that in envisioning a future that's ravaged by the environment, they imagine that humans were able to make strides in many of the other areas that are plaguing us today. And in some ways, I think also putting those things out in the world, even if it's in the context of a fictional narrative, if we can dream it, we can be it, so to speak. If we will it, it is no dream. So I think that was also just really, really struck me as we were going through these episodes.
Yeah. It's like a very grounded way of showing how climate change is going to be the very big discussion and the very big fight that everyone has to be involved in.
Yeah. I have a feeling that we're going to be talking more about this series as we move forward, even though as of yesterday on IMDb, it said that David Diggs, who plays the rabbi, is only in 2 episodes, but maybe that's because he's in 2 of the 3 that they released so far. We never know what's going on at IMDb, what they're thinking there. But I think it's also, this is coming in an era of a lot of apocalyptic themed narratives. Some of them are apocalyptic because of human violence and war. Sometimes it's because of science and technology. Sometimes it's natural disasters. And, I think it would be interesting to look at extrapolations within this kind of greater body of works like Station 11, which I don't know if you've seen, but it's marvelous. It's so good. It was just an incredible series that was on HBO Max. Obviously, The Last of Us, which is this series that I'm actually not watching about a mushroom-based contagion.
Yeah.
But it's based on a video game that's apocalyptic. And I think that they're in this space where apocalypse is looming, but not necessarily a foregone conclusion. So we'll have to see what happens. Oh, and Don't Look Up was another movie about the climate and the environment.
Right.
So I think that there's a lot of different choices you can make when you're building these worlds. In Station 11, one of the things that they held on to as a central tenet was that art was saving humanity. And here, one of the things that they're looking to is to the truth tellers of youth. So there's a tremendous character, bat mitzvah girl, in one of the episodes who really takes all of the adults to task. And she's a real powerhouse. What is it? I said that she looked like, she reminded me.
She was like a combination of Alana from Haim. Is it Chaim or Haim?
It's Haim. Yeah, I know, but it should be Chaim. But like everybody says Haim.
I think it's Haim.
Yeah.
I know, I think it's Haim. Alana from Haim mixed with like Wednesday.
I said Winona Ryder's character in Beetlejuice, right?
Yes.
And that maybe they all like sat in a classroom and got schooled by Greta Thunberg. It's just like they're all like, it's this real sense that she's looking to the adults for answers, taking them to task, making them think about things in a different light. And she's kind of like the best bat mitzvah girl we've ever seen, possibly.
Yeah. The way that they look at young people in this show is really powerful because a lot of the time, and teen actors have actually like criticized this lately, that like either they're a diamond in the rough, like they're just like, wow, you're like amazing. Like, we haven't seen anyone like you before. Or they're like this whiny teenager who's just very disconnected. And it's like, wait a minute, like we've seen the March for Our Lives kids. Like we know that kids are strong and they have power, especially when they become 18 and they have a voice, or when she becomes 13 and becomes an adult in Jewish society and actually has questions. And I love that this episode takes place on Saturdays where they keep going to services and you keep kind of seeing the Shabbat services in like a climate change era, while also this girl is coming of age for her bat mitzvah and Passover is happening in between all of that. It just offers a lot of great opportunity for storytelling, and also another great reason for I sent you the 2 boats and a canoe and this, what more can you want joke. That's my favorite rabbi joke.
Yeah. The punchline is sometimes more briefly, who do you think sent the boats? Just,
right.
Like,
also it's like, it's just a great, it's like, what's it out of our control and what isn't? And the main question that this bat mitzvah girl keeps asking is, why is God doing this? Or why isn't God stopping this? And then the rabbi goes, well, what responsibility do we have? Right? And I think also sometimes people don't want to deal with climate change because they can't see it. Like they see it, but it's still disconnected. And I think showing a synagogue underwater and flooding, and it's so bad, the hurricanes are so bad in this area that people have to wear like rain boots to services, and this is just the normal. I think that makes it more personal. And it also reminded me of when rabbis in LA and in the Valley had to save Torah scrolls during those massive fires a couple years ago, that things were so bad, but you still have to think about like your life. And they were evacuating synagogues, but the rabbis were still going in and trying to save the Torah scrolls. And like, that's like a real thing that happened here. And you're seeing those stories told in this show. And it just makes climate change more personal and not super preachy.
One of the things that I was also struck by is the fact that even though it is flooded partially, the synagogue, there are people who are still going. There is talk about how some people are taking the relocation. Sounds like a really cool, once you say it, relo. So the relocation packages that are taking them like further inland away from the coasts, where it's presumably safer from floods, but may not be safer from other things. And of course, the climate has changed significantly. So maybe it's a little cooler in the Midwest. But anyway, the point is that like, there are still people who are going to shul, and they're going because they always go and because their family had helped build the place. And, that's what they do. By the same token, they're not necessarily always behaving in a religiously moral and upright way. And the fact that there are, the question of whether all Jewish institutions should be preserved, in the event of a natural disaster, right? What should you do with a community where there are people who are integrally involved in building the shul, but the shul may not be eligible for saving according to the federal government, right? So, do you pick up and move somebody somewhere else? Do you dig in and just decide you're going to get it done no matter how you have to do it, because the most important thing is the survival of this synagogue that your family invested in? I think that there's real interesting questions to be asked about whether it's important to maintain a synagogue in a disastrous climate, and if so, at what cost to the community and to individuals in it.
There's so many things to unpack, and I think it's just really great that there's enough to unpack, that it's a Jewish story that has the time to sit in it and show different examples of what Jewishness can look like. And they're still people. So they're not perfect. It's not like someone's a complete stereotyped villain. And it's not like someone is completely the untouchable savior, good person. Everyone kind of has good and bad with them, which I think makes them more dynamic, which is just refreshing to watch, especially when it's like a Jewish story, but it's also not a Jewish story. It's very cool.
There was a scene that happens, I think it's after one of the services, where they're all kind of hanging around outside. It looks like that scene in You People where they're hanging around after shul at the skirball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which also, of course, reminded me that I was really mad at Extrapolations for not inviting us to be synagogue extras, because obviously we are very good at that and we should be invited to the next one.
It's okay.
Yeah. But I don't know that I wanted to sit with like my feet in water for however long that took. But it's really good to see a community that has people in it, some of whom are maybe not so great and others of whom are just, they're members of the congregation. Some of them are leaders. Some of them are corrupt. And if we're going to have somebody who's like a character who has questionable morality, it's a very good balance to have other Jews around who are good and really trying to do their best, and some of them who are neutral. And that's about, showing the portrait of a community, not of, caricaturing Jews as shifty and that kind of thing. So good job on the wider representation of the Jewish community. And when you're talking about representation, we should mention David Diggs, who is Black and Jewish himself, and who has given a couple of interviews where he talked, especially one in the Independent in the UK, where he talks about his Jewish identity, that he says that he was raised as a more practicing Jew than he is now, but he called it like a Berkeley brand of Judaism that was pretty lax. And that meeting rabbis to do his research for the show helped him reacquaint with his own Judaism. And he says, it's easy to imagine religion as something that is opposed to science, working in opposite directions than science. But that wasn't true for any of the rabbis I talked to. They were all hyper concerned with climate change, pandemic times too. They were involved in vaccine campaigns and reading all of the COVID science and figuring out how to keep their communities together based on science. And so he said it was really interesting to reconnect with religion in a different way than I did when I was young. So again, this is one of the things that we talk about here, is that how when you have somebody who is Jewish and cast in a Jewish role, that it can lead to a deeper performance. And I think this is a really deep performance. He struggles at first with his commitment to being in Israel versus his commitment to being in the diaspora and the community that his family is a part of. Once he's in his family community, he struggles with how to keep it together. And he thinks about it very deeply. It also shows us that rabbis can be anyone, and I think that the idea, in support of your de-Ashkenormifying everything, right? He might be an Ashkenazi Jew, but he's not a white Ashkenazi Jew. Like, he's a Black Ashkenazi Jew. And his parents are Leslie Uggams and Peter Riegert. And so, I think that there's a lot, and we had Judd Hirsch is back again for more Judaism. I feel like there's just a lot of different characters and a lot of different Jewish actors to look at. And I think it really helped ground it for me. David Schwimmer is there playing one of the characters, and the young girl who is the bat mitzvah girl with the possible, kind of sardonic end of the world kind of ideas. Her name is Neska Rose, and Rose is shortened from Rosenfeld, and she's 16 and she's awesome, and she's a singer also. And David Diggs, very famously, is also like a singer and rapper who was in Hamilton. So when you have David Diggs, you have a musical number, because otherwise you haven't understood the assignment, as I say. But yeah, I think that there's a Nick Kroll is in there as the voice of the AI. I don't know if you knew that.
Okay, I did not catch that. I did not catch it at all. I was listening to the doomsday analytics from the AI.
Yeah.
And so when David Diggs is starting one of his sermons, he quotes Elie Wiesel, and it's from his acceptance speech for the Nobel, but he was saying, we must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. And so that reference is mentioned twice, at least so far in the series. And the fact that like that's the quote I love, because it's not one I hear often. I love that quote because I think it holds our community accountable specifically. Like it reminds us that yes, anti-Semitism is a huge problem and we need to take care of ourselves, but we also need to look out for others. And we also need to remember that just as easily as it can happen to us, it can happen to other people. And we need to be able to identify it and call it out. The show is just very complicated. And I think it does a really beautiful job of showing that it is complicated.
Yeah, I agree. And, this Elie Wiesel quote just made me even more curious to know which rabbis David Diggs spoke to. This really sounds like a Sharon Brous thing from IKAR. So I wouldn't be surprised, especially since one of the executive producers is an IKAR member. So I feel like that's entirely possible. It sounds like it might have been Susan Goldberg, who's also used to consulting on TV shows. But, it would be really interesting. If you're one of the rabbis consulted by Extrapolations, please give us a call. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
We want to hear what that's about. But I think, it would be really interesting to know, like when you're doing some narrative about climate change in a conservative or reform community, who do you go to talk about those things? I would really be interested to know.
One more thing, really quick. I love that the main character is a rabbi and not just some supporting one-off character. I think it's important to see clergy grapple with the same humanity problems that we do. Just because they lead doesn't mean that they have all the answers either. And I think it's a really tough crown to carry, even though that's not really, they're not royal, but like, you know what I mean? Like, it's nice to see them struggle. It's nice to see a character like that struggle and also need support from other places. It makes our leaders also human. And I like that.
So important. All right. Well, we'll definitely be talking about this show in the weeks ahead. We might have passed the most Jewish part of it, or it might come back. We don't know. But we'll keep you informed about all of that stuff. And if you haven't seen the first 3 episodes, they are available on Apple TV Plus, and they are worth seeing.
All right. And moving into our speed round, over the weekend, Adam Sandler, the Sandman himself, or Sandlar, as we've said in previous episodes, he received a Mark Twain Award for comedy by the Kennedy Center over the weekend. I was watching some interview clips and segments earlier, recapping the show, and it's just so cool. Drew Barrymore was there, Dana Carvey was there, Chris Rock said a couple things. There were just so many people who stood by him throughout his entire career, and they just love him. And they say, like, he worked so hard to get where he is, but he also brings people with him so that when he gets really big, he brings people with him so they also have their moment too. And I just feel like that's such a special thing to have someone say about you, and to hear people speak so genuinely about you and Sandler, because he's such a goofball and like a dork. Judd Apatow was like saying he always knew this was going to happen for him because they remember being young and like growing up together and dreaming these things, but never thinking they could become a reality. And like, it's just so special to like celebrate such a Jewish goofball.
Yeah, I think they were roommates actually, Sandler and Apatow. Mm-hmm. I went to see a Judd Apatow show at Largo here in Los Angeles a couple of years ago. And about halfway through the show, Adam Sandler joined him and gave him like a whole bunch of new songs and played some of the classics also. But like you said, he is known as a goofball, but I think he's got like a lot of depth to him that he shares when he's not on screen. But I enjoy the silliness, but I also enjoy hidden depth. That's my thing.
Yeah.
So yes, Mazel Tov,
His
Sandman.
songs are so good. Yes. And we woke up Monday morning and were graced with a trailer for the final season of Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
An actual trailer this time instead of just like a pivot on a platform wearing a red dress, Like we already complained about that last episode.
I'm already so confused though. I don't know what is like, I feel like they're really holding back. They really want everything to be a surprise for us. And I'm so nervous. Like, I'm excited. I don't want the show to be over, but I also want them to like stick that landing. Don't jump the shark. Oh no, we can't afford for another show to jump a shark.
Yeah. Well, it could go one way, it could go another, or it could go somewhere in the middle. And I think that it's been really hard to, like you said, stick the landing and just have everybody agree that it was ended the way it was supposed to end. People are very connected to the story and to the universe that the Maisel verse, as you know, as we've come to know it, and we're invested in seeing what happens to these characters. You know, we saw a bit of Susie. We saw some of the things they set up in season 4 or having negative repercussions.
Talking.
Right.
Esther speaks. These kids are old now. Like they're getting older.
Right.
So they're like
Esther speaks.
They can like speak, but like they can speak to their mom. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, are they gonna, give her a hard time? Like, is she gonna use it as material? Like, and I didn't see a lot of Joel.
Joel was closing a door,
which is
you. It's good for me. Not a Joel fan. I know
you really don't care for him much.
No. I really don't care for him much, but he's the father of Esther, so I have to respect him.
But also, I think I saw Milo Ventimiglia. Like, wasn't he so he shows up again? Oh my God. I thought he was like just a punchline in like last season. Oh my God. I can't handle.
Well, I think one of the things that you're responding to is, let me Esther explain what you're responding to.
Yes.
Along with the release of the trailer, there are some notes about how Amy Sherman Palladino and her husband, Dan, right? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Dan Palladino, Danny Pal, as we call him. We don't call him that. But so the two of them knew how it was going to end while they were doing season 4. So I think that you're going to see a lot of the things that happen in season 4. I mean, obviously, when you have a next season, it continues from the season before it. But I think you'll see some very concrete kind of lines between season 4 and season 5. And I'm saying that with no advanced knowledge of what's going on, just based on what we saw in the trailer and that piece of information. And and we know that Amy Sherman Palladino has written and directed a number of episodes in the new season. So we'll see how all of that shakes out.
Like, I have butterflies in my stomach right now. I am so excited for this season. I am so nervous. Also, it looks like it's still in the early 60s, which is good. But, like, I'm also nervous about Lenny Bruce. You're
so nervous about Lenny.
Because I love him. He's my favorite part. He's, like, one of my favorite parts of the show. But also, I don't want him to die.
Well, maybe it's the multiverse. It's the multiverse in so many places. So maybe this is alt Lenny Bruce and alt Maisel, and maybe this is like going into a different dimension.
No, don't say that, because then it's going to be like Riverdale. I just saw a trailer last week for like the new Riverdale, and I'm like, oh my God, Esther, I'm so glad we jumped off that show when we did, because it doesn't even feel familiar anymore. Yeah. So could you imagine? Oh my God, like Sabrina the Teenage Witch just shows up into Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Right.
Oh, right. No.
Well, I don't mean quite that far of a multiverse, but that there was that whole magical realism thing that happened last season where like the Susie ended up in the forest. Remember that whole thing where she stared at a calendar?
The magician.
And she ended up in the forest, right?
Oh, that was so weird.
Right?
You're right.
So,
oh man, that magician is just going to cause trouble for everyone. It's going to be like Puck. Oh my God, do you think this final season is going to be like A Midsummer Night's Dream? And the magician's going to come out at the end and like Puck, like, if we offended, please, forgive us.
If these shadows have offended, think but this and all is mended.
Like she wakes up and it's all a dream and she's still back in the years and she's like giving Joel a pot roast.
That would be the worst ending, Erin.
I'm going to throw up. I'm so nervous.
Well, let's just, do you have any other wild theories that like...
Thanos comes back, snaps his fingers. Susie goes, I'm inevitable.
And then she wipes out half the population? Is that what happens? That was a Thanos reference, right?
Yes.
Okay. Because he didn't react. Okay. I mean, that's possible. Body switching is a very wild kind of thing. Like, what happens if Midge and Susie switch bodies? They both say at the same time, I wish I was you. And then they switch bodies. Yes. That could be a thing.
Okay, we love that. Mm-hmm. Like a walk a mile in each other's shoes. Also, I didn't see Stephanie Shu, but where's she?
I don't know.
Academy Award nominated actress now. Where is she?
Well, in Joel's moment where he closed the door, he looked sad. So maybe she left.
They break up? No.
I mean, again, we don't know. We don't know anything. But yeah.
Where did we last leave them? I can't remember.
Was she going to medical school on a train? Did I remember that?
Right. She did want to go to medical school, yes.
Yeah. Also, like, maybe it's all a dream. It's all Shirley's dream, and she's dreaming it. And then she wakes up and everybody's around her bedside.
No, I don't like that one.
And then Midge gives her a slice of brisket. Yeah, I don't know.
God.
I mean, I think that there's a lot of things we could talk about.
One of them almost died. Are we going to lose a grandparent this season? No, because one of them almost died. Kevin Pollak almost died last season. That was so stressful. Oh, God.
Erin's very stressed, y'all. We have only a couple of weeks to go until we can talk about this in a little bit more detail with far less speculation and more actual interpretation.
Oh, my God. I just want to watch it like right now. Why can't it be April?
It can be, just not
Listen,
today.
I'm not rushing.
Okay, good. All right. Well, we had a very futuristic episode, and we're going to be talking more in the future. And maybe next episode we'll let you know if our predictions came to pass.
Like a multiverse jump? What the hell? Isn't that the Marvels? Where they go back in time?
Just like everything everywhere all at once. It's like that in one version of the universe, Joel is the successful comic. Another part of the universe, it's Moish, I mean, in one version of the multiverse, Rose stays in France. I don't know. Like there's possibilities. Don't count out the multiverse.
Is it going to be like that Friends? Is there going to be an episode like the Friends one, like the one that could have been?
Yes. That was just on the other night.
And she wakes up.
Right.
And she was like, oh my God.
Right. And Phoebe's a stockbroker. Right.
Right. I'm nervous. We've never been right before. Like, what if we're right?
So that should actually bring you some consolation, is that we've never been right in our predictions before. So maybe everything that you're thinking.
This is the last season.
I know.
What if they go, what if suddenly someone goes, Maisel, we have to go back in time. Your kids, they're in trouble. Where we're going, we don't
Something's got to be done about your kids. Right.
Wow, that's heavy, Doc. Who's Doc? Like, what if they do that? Like, oh God.
Maybe it's all Esther's reflection. Like she's rebuilding her life to make sense of what her mother did.
Are you telling me this is all Esther's perspective of how her mother came to be in real Gilmore Girls fashion? Esther.
Well, I think also, in a very real sense, Amy Sherman Palladino has talked about the series being about her growing up with her comedian father. So the parallel is there.
You're so right. I don't even know why I didn't think of that before, because that's what happens in the last... Like in that reboot of Gilmore Girls, that's what happens. She wants to write the story of her life, and she and her mom. And we assume as the viewer that all those seasons of Gilmore Girls is Rory's interpretation of what happened to her life. Oh my God, Esther can talk. And now this is going to be like Esther's. Right. Shut up. Don't do this to me. You're right. Oh my God. What if you're right? Oh my God, Esther, what if you did it?
If I solved it. I don't know. I think I really probably wouldn't have even thought of that if she hadn't spoken in the trailer, quite honestly. And again, we have not seen anything.
Ethan has spoken multiple times. We don't think anything of him. Suddenly Esther opens her mouth and here's the whole thing.
Right. Maybe. I don't know. I think it's possible, but you're going to be mad at me now.
My stomach is turning. I've never been so nervous because we're never right. But this is the last season. Well, anything could stick. Anything could happen.
I want to state for the record that we have not watched the screeners yet. So we do not know anything right now.
Yeah, this is all hearsay. Right. This is all speculation.
That's right. So
I don't even have the screener, so I have no idea. It's all up in the air.
But I think, Erin, one of the things that is coming up for me right now is just how, well, first of all, how invested you are in this TV show.
I'm itchy. Right. I'm getting red.
I know. Erin's breaking out from my fan theories. But I think
at first I was like, oh no, what if Lenny Bruce dies? And
oh God. The multiverse is your only hope to avoid that, actually, because then, otherwise he's on a collision course with history. So.
He competes with Marvel now. Everything has a multiverse.
Yeah,
who could have been? Oh my God.
All right. Well, I think that's it for us for today. Anything else in the speed round that we need to cover, or is that it?
Nope.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. See y'all next time.
Yes, and tell us what you think what's the craziest thing that's going to happen in Maisel? We want to hear what you think.
Go wide.
Please top our craziness.
Go multiverse. Quantum realm, maybe. Yes. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye. This has been The Bagel Report, a production of J, the Jewish News of Northern California, and a part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network. Thank you to Lev Gringaz, our producer from Jew Folk Inc., David A.M. Walensky and Andrew Essenston, and Danny Lipsky for creating our logo. You can find us wherever podcasts are listened to. Connect with us on social, on Twitter, at Esther K, at Eben Moshe, and at The Bagel Report, on Instagram at Esther Kostanowitz, at Eben Moshe, and TBR the Pod, and by emailing us at thebagelreport@gmail.com. Now go and watch something interesting, and maybe we'll talk about it next time on The Bagel Report.